Welcome back to another video. My name is Giuliano and I like to talk about watches. In fact, I even work at a Japanese micro brand right here in Japan. And I am one of the co-founders of The Watch Brief, which I hope will soon be your favorite source of watch news, watch reviews, and questionable opinions. This video is going to be a little bit different from the two videos that I've released so far because it is my first official review. I've written reviews for The Watch Brief, but I haven't actually done a video review of a watch. If I make any mistakes or if I miss anything, please don't hesitate to point it out in the comments, and I would be happy to explain or clarify anything. Oh, real quick, before we move forward with the rest of the review, one of the things that I hate about some watch reviewers is that they never talk about what watch is on their wrist, and I can't pause the video and zoom in and figure out what watch you're wearing, so let me fix that for my own video. Today I'm wearing the Vario Empire chronograph. It's a Mecha Quartz chronograph, and I chose this black tuxedo configuration. It's a really neat watch. I only got it last weekend, so I'm definitely still in the honeymoon phase, and I will be reviewing it later on as well. Without further ado, let's talk about the watch I'm reviewing today. The Vario Versa is a watch that took our industry by storm. Imagine a watch that has the functionality of a JLC Reverso. It has the basic silhouette or the look of a classic Cartier tank, and it's not even $500. That would be the Vario Versa. Vario is a micro brand based in Singapore, and they initially started out making straps or other accessories for watches. In fact, you can still find their initial Kickstarter campaigns available on Kickstarter right now. They have grown well beyond that, but it's always nice to check it out and see where they started from. Pretty soon after Ivan and Judy, the founders of Vario, got the company off the ground, they released their first Kickstarter campaign for a watch. The Vario Eclipse is a nice 1960s watch inspired by the designs of old. In my opinion, it's kind of like Bauhaus meets modern watch design, if that makes sense. Anyway, it's a pretty neat watch. It was available with a quartz option as well as a manual Miyota version. I thought that was very cool, but it wasn't exactly my cup of tea, which is perfectly fine because it was only the beginning for Vario. They continued making watch accessories and watch straps. For example, this travel watch case. If you order the Vario Versa right now, or if you order the Empire Chrono right now, you will actually receive this. This is part of the packaging. I really love it when companies can do something like make the packaging functional. I know every company nowadays pretends to have these sustainable developmental goals, but genuinely speaking, this is actually a perfect example of what sustainable development should be about. Whether you needed a watch travel case or not, you now have one, and you will find that it's almost difficult not to use it. Vario then released a few other watches, notably their World War I 1918 trench model, which is still available at the store right now. What I like about this watch is the fact that many watchmakers and many micro brands alike, they tend to make these World War II inspired watches. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but it just means that there's a lot to choose from. In fact, you can even get a genuine World War II watch today from Vertex. You can also get a genuine one from Laco or Stova. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single watchmaker or brand that still makes a World War I inspired watch. So in this regard, I think Vario was very unique in pursuing this different angle. Once again though, not necessarily my cup of tea, even if I love the idea behind it. A year later, they launched the Vario Versa. As the name suggests, it is called the Versa because you can actually flip it or reverse it into another watch face. This is a really cool concept, and while I admired the theory of it, I wasn't prepared for how awesome it actually was when I finally got it in hand. So let's go back to when I first saw it in person, which ironically is not when I actually bought the watch. In 2025, I flew to Manila for a pen show because that's part of my job, and then I ran into a friend from high school. Little did I know, he was also into watches. Shout out Paolo. And guess what? He was wearing a Vario Versa on his wrist. Of course, I immediately recognized it, but at the time, I had never seen one in person. That is the main issue with many micro brands. It's very difficult to actually see one on hand. So of course, I immediately asked him, even though it had been years since we last spoke, I immediately asked him, hey man, can you show me the thing? Can you flip it over, you know? He obliged, thankfully, and our friendship has thrived ever since. So what I first thought was a gimmick became something much more when I saw it in person. But I still wasn't convinced. I now knew that this flipping mechanism was awesome. I still didn't see a design that really spoke to me. Almost an entire year passed before I was scrolling through Instagram, like most Gen Z, and then I saw a new release from Vario. In fact, this was a limited edition release, and it was to celebrate the Lunar New Year, or the Year of the Horse, which is the zodiac animal for 2026. You may have already seen that my third ever long form video is a video about Lunar New Year watches, so you can imagine that this was exactly what I was looking for. So without further hesitation, I just added it to cart and ordered it. The watch arrived and it's basically been glued to my wrist ever since. That same weekend, I flew to Taiwan for a short trip. And again, although I brought 2 watches with me, it was very difficult for me to convince myself not to just use the Versa the entire time. I think this Lunar New Year, Year of the Horse edition is so cool. So on one side, you have a classic dark red or vermilion dial, and it has these beautiful gold accents from the gold. It also has these gold flecks all over the dial. Now, once again, I'm not trying to promote my company here, but because of my company, I learned that this technique is called makie in Japan. Makie basically means to take gold powder or silver powder, it's up to you, and then it's the art of sprinkling it onto the surface of a work of art. Now, you might be thinking, oh, what's so difficult about that? Well, as someone who has actually tried it and who has actually had real makie art as points of comparison, let me tell you this, it is a lot more difficult than it sounds. It also has a minute track so that you can keep track of time. And then, of course, right above the 6 o'clock mark is the zodiac symbol of the horse, or the Chinese symbol for the horse. When you flip it, you reveal this bright white enamel dial. And unlike the red part, I would say that this dial is a lot more legible. I'm able to tell the time much more easily with this. Again, the red dial also had a minute track, so you can still tell the time. That's not the problem. But I would say that the red side, or the Year of the Horse side, as I like to refer to it, is more about appreciating the art. It's more about appreciating the design. Again, nothing wrong with that. Whereas the white dial side, in its sheer simplicity, it allows me to just focus mostly on telling the time, you know? It also has numerals at 12, 9, 3, and 6. So again, that makes it easier to just, boom, I can tell the time at a glance. It has a sector style design, which you don't really see from a rectangular watch. So I thought that was cool too. Now you may notice that it has crowns on the top and the bottom of the watch. And that's because it actually has 2 Swiss quartz movements inside. What that means is you can set the time zone of each watch side or each watch face independently from each other, basically making it into a pseudo GMT watch. Once again, you can draw comparisons with the JLC Reverso Dual Time, which also has that feature. But again, let me reiterate, this is a $500 watch. And in the next chapter, I will also explain why comparisons to JLC or Cartier is not necessarily fair, even if I was guilty of that before I actually saw it in person. But again, that's for later. The watch comes with this really nice red leather strap. I believe it's a vegan leather. And then it has this deploying clasp. Now, I've had a deploying clasp like this before with other watches, and I absolutely hated it. I hated how, you know, the deploying part would dig into my wrist. And so I wasn't really excited when I first saw that. But as you can see, I still have it on it, even though I wear it all the time. And that's because it's actually very comfortable. I find that it doesn't dig into my wrist at all, like so many other deploying clasps, or for example, like a butterfly clasp. So I'm very happy with that. You will also be happy to know that the lug width of this watch is 20 millimeters. So most likely you already have a couple of other straps that can go well with this. Or you can go out and easily find a strap that is compatible with this watch. Anyways, I don't want to exaggerate, but I really do think that this is such a beautiful watch. And call me shallow, but that's super important to me. How a watch looks on my wrist, and how it makes me feel about my fashion and how I look is incredibly important to me. And I think it's probably important to a lot of other people. The red dial might not be compatible or as versatile with as many outfits. And some people might say that, oh, because of the symbol, it makes it strictly a year of the horse watch. It makes it a Lunar New Year watch. And I can only wear it in 2026 or until the next year of the horse. That's insane, respectfully. And I disagree. However, I do agree that the red dial may not be compatible with as many outfits or as many occasions. That's perfectly fine. Thank God that we can just, flip it over to the white side. Honestly, if your outfit is not compatible with this white enamel, I don't even know what kind of outfit you might be wearing. You will also notice that on the side of the watch, you will see these screws on each side. That's basically what allows you to flip the watch so easily without any issues. Like, see, I just keep flipping it. It's like a fidget toy for me at this point. Essentially, the watch is made by having this rectangular steel frame, and then the actual watch with the movement and everything is then inserted into the steel frame, kind of like a chassis, and then the screws are, screwed on. Again, I'm really not a handy person, so maybe I'm completely wrong, but that is my understanding of how this flip mechanism works. So that means I can do this, boom, no problem. It's also worth noting that, okay, let's say you're wearing it and then you remove it to flip it. I would recommend wiping the dial a little bit. I have worn this during rather warm weather. I found that the flat sapphire crystal would kind of stick to my sweaty skin, but maybe that's just a me issue. It's just worth noting, however. An issue that some people might have, I know I have, although I also know other people who don't have this issue, is that depending on where you wear this watch on your wrist, and depending on your movements, for example, you're moving around, I like to talk with my hands a lot. I think you can tell that by now. But yeah, depending on that, sometimes you'll find that the watch actually kind of shifts a little bit, so it almost is like loose. Of course, it's in no danger of falling out, but then ever so slightly, I can feel it shift on my wrist. Again, it's not a huge issue, and sometimes I don't even notice it. However, I thought it would be best to share this with you, so, if you were to purchase it, you can make an informed decision. Anyway, now let me talk about the JLC in the room. JLC, which is known as the watchmaker's watchmaker, made a terrific watch called the Reverso. They made this for polo players, actually. In case you're worried about your watch being damaged, you would be able to basically slide it over to the side and then flip it. Interestingly enough, there were about 2 or 3 decades where this terrific watch basically got stuck in storage and no one paid attention to it. I think it's because the round watch design became more and more popular, or I think maybe at the time it just wasn't that common for everyone to wear a really expensive watch while playing polo. That could be a reason. Anyway, years later, around the 1970s, it was rediscovered because the Italian distributor of JLC saw it during a tour of the studio, and then they thought, you know what, that we can do something out of this. Since then, it has been a permanent part of JLC's collection, and you could probably see it anytime you want if you were to just go to an AD. I think it's a beautiful watch, and I think more watches should take some inspiration from it. Now, the big question is, does the Vario Versa copy from the Reverso? Okay, so let's look at the similarities that they have. I'm gonna be 100% honest. And again, I purchased this watch with my own money, so I have no benefit to lying here, okay? They both tell time. Boom, that's number one. They both have an Italian-ish name or a Latin-ish name, although the Reverso ends with an O, and the Versa ends with an A. So a little bit different, but you know, I'm watching you, Vario. And then the third thing is they both flip. That is a pretty major similarity. Although the concept is the same, yes, a watch that flips. Completely agree that that concept is the same, but the execution and the design and pretty much everything else is not the same. So what do I mean by that? Well, for a reverso, the way you would flip it, you would basically slide it until it's almost as if it's off the watch completely, and then you flip it like that, and then you slot it back in. You are moving it on the horizontal axis of the watch. Whereas for the Versa, you are moving it on the vertical axis. So it can flip either forward or backward like that really easily because of this cool mechanism that they have actually applied to patent. So that is a major difference in the mechanism. Now let's talk about case silhouette, right? Like, do they even look the same or do they look similar? Well, I'm just gonna put two pictures side by side, the Vario and the Reverso, and then you can be the judge of that. Me personally, I think they couldn't look more different. The only thing they have similar is the fact that they are both rectangular. In my opinion, this would be basically like saying, oh, you know, the Rolex Sub and the Doxa Sub 300 have a lot of similarities. They both have sub in their name. Whoa. They both are divers. That's a pretty big deal. Their water resistance is the same. I'm starting to think that Doxa copied Rolex. So again, you can still make up your own mind. Maybe in your mind, they have copied the Reverso. Respectfully, I do disagree. And I have given you the reasons why I disagree. I also think that in watchmaking, there's no such thing as a truly original watch. It's kind of like how a lot of people might accuse Seiko, correctly in some cases, but there was a point when Seiko, as well as other brands, would make a diver with a black dial and a black bezel, and people would immediately say, oh my God, they're copying the Rolex Sub. They're copying it. At the end of the day, it's almost not their fault because the Rolex Sub has become so ubiquitous as the diver design. There was a point when your diver could either look like the Rolex Sub or it could look like a Blancpain 50 Fathoms. Those were your only two options. Of course, that isn't actually true, but it felt that way at one point, and you can even see it in all these other brands. Does that mean these other brands have all copied Blancpain or they copied Rolex? No. Does that mean that these two brands have basically created a template and many brands have been inspired by them? Yes. So now let me talk about the things that I don't like about this watch, because believe it or not, there are some things that I feel could be better with the Vario Versa. So to reiterate, I don't like how sometimes I can feel it shift. Again, maybe this is just my Versa. Maybe I just have weird wrists, but at the end of the day, it is something that I'm not a big fan of. It is a thicker watch than one would expect. Again, this is not an issue for me because I have my share of thick watches. So it's not a deal breaker, but if you ask me, okay, I would probably want to fix that. I would probably prefer it if this watch were possible to be somehow thinner. I'm not the engineer, I'm not the watchmaker, so unfortunately, I can't make suggestions on how to make that possible. Now, my final criticism is not really a criticism at all. In fact, it is just a suggestion because I've heard it from so many people. But I would recommend developing an automatic or manual mechanical version of the Versa. For me, I love quartz watches. I actually think that they're so convenient, and I love the fact that this watch does not have a seconds hand. So I never really have the issue of, okay, the seconds hand is slightly misaligned, so blah, blah, blah. You know, I never have that annoyance in my life while I'm wearing it. So again, for me, it's not an issue. So I guess maybe that's not even necessary. However, I am happy to say that according to Vario, they have already developed a prototype and they are working on making it for more people. So if the only thing holding you back from getting a Vario Versa is the fact that it's quartz, rest assured they are well on their way to finally releasing a mechanical version of this awesome watch. If you would like to learn more about this limited edition watch that's about to be sold out, feel free to click the link in the description. Additionally, if you don't really like watching reviews and you would prefer to read reviews, then you can also check the link in the description or in the bio and read the full review on thewatchbrief.com. Thank you to Vario for your amazing customer service and for honestly being some of the best people in the micro brand watch space. And thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you have decided to subscribe, hopefully you have decided to like the video, and I hope that we can also chat in the comments below.